Coming up on the Inside Indiana Business Television podcast, we preview the Indiana Global Economic Summit. Easterseals Crossroads sees success with a new fundraising tool. Trendiana shines a spotlight on Indiana's international food offerings. A company focused on improving your hearing is on the INnovators with Dr. K. A Hoosier organ donor takes the national spotlight. And we look back at 2019 and ahead to 2020 in our Eye on Economic Development segment. Welcome to the Inside Indiana Business Television podcast. I'm Andy Ober. Organizers expect more than 800 people to attend the inaugural Indiana Global Economic Summit from April 26th through the 28th in Indianapolis. The summit aims to bring global economic leaders together to spark collaboration and advance work on innovative solutions to universal issues. Indiana Secretary of Commerce Jim Schellinger joined Inside Indiana Business host Gary Dick to preview the summit.
The Davos of the Midwest, the World Economic Forum in Switzerland that gets the cream of the crop from the business community and elsewhere. That was kind of the inspiration for this summit next April.
It is. This is really an extension of the governor's next level connectivity. And it started for me, I tease, Johnny Cash has never been anywhere I haven't been. But it started with going to each and every one of the 92 counties, taking Indiana to the world, bringing the world to Indiana, then every region of the United States, and now 28 different countries on 56 international trips. And now we have Routes Americas coming, February 3rd through the 5th, where we'll have 800 different people coming, representing 80 airlines and 300 international airports, bringing them to Indiana, taking Indiana to the world. And it dawned on us at one point, the governor had a vision to say, like connecting flights across international waters, domestic flights, direct flights. Also, we want to continue to get people to understand, know about Indianapolis. So Routes America, bringing all those people here in February is going to be great. The sports, the championship series with all these sports, any one city would love to get one of them. And this is just the next extension to hold an Indiana Global Economic Summit, because we are global and the world gets smaller every single day.
Give us an idea of some of the people who may be there and what kind of a high-profile event this is expected to be.
It's going to be extremely high profile. I would say this is going to be like the business Super Bowl for Indiana. So this was inspired by the number of international companies we have in Indiana that do work all over the world. Cummins, 105 countries, Lilly, 100 countries, and I see them everywhere I go. And so to take all of our international-based companies, bring them together that do work internationally, and even ones that would like to do work, small businesses that want to do work, and then to bring in the 39 countries that invest in Indiana, 39 countries that employ over 200,000 people in 1,020 businesses. Bring councils general. We're going to have a special advisory council, international advisory council with 15 council generals from all the countries we do business with, government figures, universities. We're going to bring students in a big way. We want students to attend. So this is bringing the quality minds together to think tank, and we're going to look at the future of agribusiness. We're going to look at the future of advanced manufacturing, aerospace, and defense. And we've got some star-studded speakers lined up, mainly because we have so many great relationships now. So the CEO of Saab will be here from Sweden. The CEO of Tate Lion will be here from London. Lou Holtz will speak at the lunch on Tuesday, or Monday afternoon. And the list just goes on and on and on. We've got ambassadors. It's a lot, Gary, like you've experienced. The governor has made the Indianapolis 500 an international event, hosting 18 nations last year in his suite. And we are really becoming global, tripling our FDI 3 times. Yeah. 3 times in the last 3 years.
So this will be a place for conversation, not necessarily a sales pitch for Indiana, but having that leadership from around the world here. You view that as an opportunity, in a sense, to sell Indiana and to have these CEOs see what Indiana is about.
Absolutely. When I travel, I tell the Indiana story that I didn't write a sentence of, but I enjoyed from a private sector viewpoint. So when we have to talk about Indiana. We bring people here. We don't have to talk about Indiana. Indiana shows so well in the hospitality, the Hoosier hospitality, and the professionalism of this state and these businesses. It's the highest honor I've ever had to represent this state. And it's going to be so great to be hosting all these people I visited with from all 28 countries here in the heart of the heartland, the crossroads of America, Indiana.
Only have 20 seconds, Jim, but 2019 was a big year for international investment. As you look at 2020, you mentioned the Routes Americas conference, this summit. Do you think 2020 could be that tipping point for international investment and jobs in Indiana?
I think so. As I said, we've tripled our investments since 2016, but we're up against a lot of things. We're up against presidential impeachment and fears of recessions and trade barriers and workforce. But I think we've done well this year in spite of that, and next year we're going to be overcoming some of those, and we'll be right back up.
All right. Jim Schellinger is the Indiana Secretary of Commerce. Jim, as always, welcome to the Global Economic Summit in Indiana next April. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Still to come, a look at Indiana's best international eats and the innovators with Dr. K. But first, the pressure continues to build for nonprofits looking to attract funding. Easterseals Crossroads' social enterprise model has proven to be a success for additional fundraising and additional support for people with disabilities. President and CEO J. Patrick Sandy came in studio to talk about Crossroads Industrial Services.
First of all, I think most people know the Easterseals name, been around for a long time, but give us really the model and what Easterseals Crossroads is all about.
Sure. We provide services to folks with disabilities from the beginning of their life, infancy, all the way through the lifespan. So that can take the form of therapy services. It can be employment services. We try and graduate our services as the person grows older.
Yeah. So you engage at an early age. And in terms of the impact, last year Easterseals Crossroads served nearly 9,000 individuals with disabilities or special needs. So a lot of impact.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. In terms of funding, and I think this is an interesting part of the Easterseals Crossroads story, is the way you do business. And as a nonprofit, you understand that it's getting tougher and tougher. 25% of your revenues, of your support, comes from philanthropy, right?
That is absolutely correct, yeah. And there's a lot of research showing that philanthropy is dropping off in terms of grant opportunities and even the general public making donations to organizations like Easterseals Crossroads.
So as I look at it, you're a nonprofit doing business more like a for-profit entity, looking at ways to generate revenue. Great example, a recent acquisition of Technofit in Brownsburg.
Correct. Yes, we sort of implemented a plan a few years ago to start trying to solve our own problem in terms of the loss of funding. So we looked first at purchasing companies that we could bring into our industrial service division that would provide a margin to support the other side of the house. Those are the programs and services that are supporting folks with disabilities and being as independent as possible. Yeah. And Technofit is our third acquisition.
Yeah.
Our first one was Lucida, which is a electronic medical record scanning company. Mm-hmm. We brought that company into Easterseals Crossroads Industrial Services, I think in 2013. Mm-hmm. That went well, and so we brought in another company. This was one that we purchased out of Chicago, and the name of that company was in Tunis. And now it's called Crossroads Controls, and it makes pressure switches for HVAC applications in heaters, boilers, that sort of thing, mostly for commercial use.
And really what you're doing is unique, I think unique in Indiana. Would that be an accurate statement?
It is an accurate statement. It's really built on the model of being a social enterprise. So we're providing opportunities to support our cause, our value, our mission, and we're doing that by generating income ourselves to do that. We
only have about 30 seconds, but I thought it was interesting, the Technofit acquisition. That company in Brownsburg had multiple potential buyers, but ended up, they wanted you to be the buyer.
Yes, and what we did was we had them come to Easterseals Crossroads and see our industrial service division and see what we were doing in terms of supporting folks with disabilities and the number of people that are actually working there. And they say when they left the building, they made the decision to sell the company to us because not only it was going to allow an opportunity to continue their legacy, but it was going to move to a higher cause where we could support people with disabilities.
Easterseals Crossroads continues to make huge impact in Indiana, and J. Patrick Sandy, the CEO of the organization, thanks for being on, doing business in a unique way and making an impact. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary.
All right.
Later in the podcast, a Carmel hearing device care company joins the Innovators with Dr. K, and a Hoosier organ donor serves as a national inspiration. But now, if you're looking to break out beyond the U.S. border for your holiday cooking inspiration, Indiana has plenty of offerings. Yelp Midwest Regional Director Brittany Smith has a roundup of Indiana companies offering up global flavor in this month's Trendiana segment.
Christmas is a traditional holiday, but so many of those traditions can be found, global traditions can be found right here in Indiana.
Exactly. You can be pulling from different cultures and infusing new traditions with your family.
Bûche de Noël?
Yeah, Bûche de Noël.
Bûche de Noël,
Wonderful
thank
job.
you.
That's right. I know.
A product from France, and that's the Cake Bake Shop.
Yes, the Cake Bake Shop has their own beautiful version of it. Traditionally, it's a Yule log. It comes from France and French colonies. Their version has a zesty orange, buttercream, candied oranges on top. You can order it online and even have it shipped to someone special in another
calories
state.
involved.
No calories. You can smell the chocolate from right here,
yeah,
right?
You can. You literally can. Another tradition, tamales from Mexico. 3-in-1 restaurant. That's also here in Indianapolis.
Yeah, located on 86th Street. You can't have, when you think of Mexican Christmas, it goes hand in hand with tamales. It's something traditional they do each year. 3-in-1 restaurant is one of the most popular spots in the state for tamales on Yelp. And they have beef, chicken, several different varieties. It is a delicious spot.
Okay, I'm not a fruitcake fan, but I know there are a lot of people who are.
That's right. You got to mix it up.
That's right. So we go to northern Indiana for Fruitcakes by Deb. That's in Middlebury.
Yeah, and the beautiful thing about this business, because fruitcakes are usually kind of the joke of the holidays, is these are non-preservative fruitcakes. So they're different from the other ones you've probably had in the store. Real fruits, no additives in there. They even have a tropical variety, a chocolate version. She's really mixing it up.
Some of these locations, I think, may be newer. One that is not. One that is a tradition is the Heidelberg House.
Yes.
In Lawrence, right there on Pendleton Pike, and Springerly is a German dish.
Got the anise flavor. It's a simple dough. They use these wooden carved stamps to make beautiful designs on them. They get orders from around the world for their Springerly every year. They're bustling right now.
They're cookies.
Yes, it's
right?
a cookie. It's a white cookie, and you have beautiful designs on each one. You can see them behind the counter.
Another traditional business here in our city is Shapiro's Delicatessen.
Yes.
And speaking of cookies, they have several cookies, right, for Hanukkah.
Yes, they've got the Star of David cookie. They have the Rugelach, which has a fluffy pastry filled with different things like apricot, chocolate, cinnamon. It's a really fun spot, and you can also find them at the Fashion Mall.
Wow, both locations.
Yes.
Okay, Taste of Italy, Panettone at
Yes.
Macri's Italian Bakery. That's up in northern Indiana and South Bend.
Yeah, panettone is a classic recipe. It came over from Milan. It's a very fluffy type of cake, very tall. This bakery has been around since 1978 in South Bend, so it's a classic staple in the community.
One of my favorite stories, the Sisters of St. Benedict, the monastery in southern Indiana. They've got a bakery in Ferdinand and make ginger snaps in Springerly there in southern Indiana.
Classic flavor of the holidays, ginger snaps. You've got the cinnamon, the nutmeg, and they do a beautiful job at shipping it. So if you're last minute looking for someone, a gift for somebody, they always package their items beautifully, and you can order them all online.
Yeah, and they have a real business
Yes,
down there,
it's
don't
a
they, with the
gorgeous
bakery?
website. I've used it to ship to folks on my team as well.
All right, some great international desserts, perhaps inspiration for you during this holiday season. Brittany Smith from Yelp. As always, thank you.
Yes.
Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays.
Yes, likewise. Thanks so much.
Okay, we'll talk to you soon.
Remember, you can catch Inside Indiana Business Television on stations throughout the state every weekend. Head to InsideIndianaBusiness.com to check listings. Still to come, an Indiana organ donation inspiration, and Marian University marks a historic day in athletics. But first, from your phone to hearing instruments, Carmel-based Redux says it has a solution for dealing with the moisture they encounter. The company says it can restore those instruments to their peak operation in about 14 minutes with just the push of a button. CEO Ruben Zelensky and Director of Audiology Sales Matt Hay joined Donald Korotko on the Innovators with Dr. K.
I always start with this. In your own words, explain what is Redux.
It's actually a vacuum drying system.
Okay.
We pull a strong vacuum and we boil water at room temperature. Water normally boils at 212 degrees Fahrenheit on your stove.
Right.
But pulling in a strong vacuum, we can boil it at room temperature.
Interesting.
We look for an endpoint using a humidity sensor, and we can guarantee all the water is removed from an electronic device that's in that chamber by measuring the humidity that goes to zero.
That's really neat. Why, I always ask, why the name Redux? Where did that come from? Is there a backstory?
There is. Originally, Redux started as device recovery systems.
Okay.
That was the original business plan. Once we realized, because we were trying to recover data from a phone, once we realized we could recover the device, we changed it to Revive Electronics, and that's where we're incorporated in Indiana.
Okay.
We wanted to build a brand, so we hired a marketing firm, and we identified Redux as a brand name that we wanted to use. We bought the URL for a small fee, and now we do business as Redux.
Interesting. So the name itself is more of a brand name, not really representing something special.
Well, redux actually in the Webster's Dictionary means to bring back or revive.
Oh, wow, fantastic, great. So what's the potential market for this innovation?
Well, we're in 2,300 mobile phone retail stores right now.
Okay.
We're about to go to 3,000 in the first quarter. But we've identified a new vertical for hearables and hearing aids.
Right.
There's approximately 50 million people in the United States that are hard of hearing. Only about 20% are served. And there's 470 million worldwide. And we believe we could serve a vast majority of those. If we look ahead in the next 3 to 5 years using the same mobile phone retail market business plan that we have, we think this could be a $100 million a year business.
My Lord. So, when I went online and looked, Matt, you might answer this, the competition, how are you guys at Redux distinct from when I looked at competitors?
That's a great question. I've worn hearing aids half of my life. I'm actually deaf without my implant, so keeping mine operating well is particularly important to me. What's different about Redux? There are a number of dehumidifiers on the market. When somebody gets something wet, their first line of defense is usually a box of Uncle Ben's. What's different here, Ruben mentioned the vacuum dryer. Instead of just being a dehumidifier or rice, we're drying hearing aids to a complete endpoint. We're measuring humidity in real time. We're verifying it with our app of how much moisture was removed.
Right.
And all of that's happening in under 14 minutes, which really puts us in a totally different category than any other existing tool for drying a hearing aid or a hearing instrument.
Because the other competitors are, first of all, much longer, right? And they don't monitor.
Exactly. And an added benefit of this, hearables are becoming increasingly popular.
Right.
It's not just limited to hearing aids. Noise canceling, noise magnification, being able to listen to music, all things that we can dry in there in a matter of minutes.
Incredible. Wow. So what about funding? Do you have some sources up to this point? Where are you at?
Well, there was a story run in the IBJ several years ago.
Okay.
And a local investor, Scott Moorhead, who owns Round Room, that's our parent company, saw this, called his CFO and said, go capture these guys.
Wow.
And so we got an early start by putting these dryers into mobile phone retail stores, one of the large providers.
Right.
And we're able to tease out the retail environment, how it works, how to monetize it. And so we have access to all the capital we need for growing the business and expanding the market.
Wow. So from cell phones, you realized this other industry, and your investor bought into that as well, right?
Yeah, exactly. Part of my background, I used to work for a hearing aid company way back then in 2000, a startup company. They were disposable hearing aids. They were called Songbird Hearing. It failed. I learned a lot of lessons from that, but I learned a lot about hearing aids, and I knew someday that we would dry hearing aids because all hearing aids, any hearing instrument, any hearable that's in your ear canal is going to take up perspiration.
Right. Because the human body.
Exactly, the human body. It's constantly evaporating water.
Wow.
Yes.
So where do you go from here in the next steps ahead in the next few months? Where are we going?
Well, I believe the future's pretty bright. As I indicated, we have Matt Hay on board here to drive audiology sales. We're working with the hearing care professionals. We're working with the manufacturers. Everyone realizes that this is a problem. The FDA is changing their regulations in 2020, and they're going to allow over-the-counter sales of hearing aids.
Wow.
So we believe there's a huge retail market play for over-the-counter hearing aids as well as the professional segment.
That's great. Well, as I do on each and every show, guys, I try to give some prescriptions. So I gave 3 knowledge factors for you guys. The first is knowledge in business. I know you have some knowledge, obviously, but as an engineer, you want to understand it's a business, not just a technology, which I believe you now know. Second is knowledge in manufacturing. I know we had chatted, and you're working with a lot of the manufacturers already and talking to a number of them, so I think that's smart because they'll know how to scale the operations you will need. Sure. And the third is knowledge with investors. I know you have an investor, but they'll reach a point where you need some real context in the industry itself, and they can help you, again, scale. So I hope those help you guys.
That's awesome advice. Thanks very much, Dr. K.
Great, guys.
Yes.
So where can the audience find you?
Redux.com and Matt.Hay at Redux.com.
All right, sounds great. Well, there you have it, Gary. A really interesting innovation that's going to help a lot of people, and it's right here in Indiana.
Later in the podcast, Marian University celebrates historic athletic success, and we take a look at the year that was in economic development. But now, at this year's Rose Bowl parade, the Donate Life float will feature the portrait of an Indiana organ donor. Tristan Hackman saved 4 lives as an organ donor after a drug overdose in 2015. Her mother, Tammy, and Indiana Donor Network CEO Kelly Hanner joined Kylie Valletta in the business of health.
Tammy, I want to start with you. It must be so bittersweet to be going to this parade to see your daughter on the float. Tell us a little bit about Tristan and how her donation really changed other people's lives.
Tristan she liked to give people second chances. So she was always wanting, to do something to help people out. And when we lost Tristan, we knew that at that point it was a good time for her to be able to share that even more by being a donor. We weren't sure if she was registered to be one, so just to make all of the things that were bad into something good, we decided to let her be a donor, and she saved 4 lives, and we've been honored to meet her double lung recipient, and we've heard from her heart recipient, and we're excited, and we've been able to share her story with other people and encouraging them to be donors and to share the donor life with the rest of us at Indiana Donor Network.
We're glad you share her story with us today. And Kelly, the Indiana Donor Network recently hit a major milestone, 4 million Hoosiers now registered to donate. What's the significance of reaching that 4 million mark?
Well, it's been a work in progress for years, so we're really excited that 4 million Hoosiers have registered their decision to be a donor. We're in the top 7 of all the different states as far as donor registry share for people over the age of 18. And so about 76% of licensed drivers have designated themselves to be a donor. So we're really excited about that milestone.
Good Indiana success story. Tammy, one of the unique things I think most people know about the Rose Parade is that all of the floats are made out of flowers and other natural things. And your family actually got to put the finishing touches on Tristan's florograph. Tell us a little bit about that.
It was wonderful. When we received it, we opened it up, and the first thing you could do was smell how wonderful and fresh it smelled. A lot of cinnamon, and the background was to be finished, and her eyebrows, which once we put those in, we're able to put the eyebrows in and do the background. It brought her to life. And we got to share that with probably around 75 of our closest family and friends. And it was a wonderful experience for us to be able to actually do it by hand and finish it up.
And Kelly, 4 million, obviously a big mark, but I'm sure you have more goals. So where do you go from 4 million? What's the next goal for Indiana Donor Network?
Well, we'd love for 100% of Hoosiers to be registered as donors. So we've got that 24% that we're still trying to reach. We don't want anybody to ever rule themselves out as a donor. So make that decision. You can go to the BMV. You can go to our website. It's very different than years ago when you had to go into the BMV, but you can go to indianadonornetwork.org and register your decision in a matter of minutes. So we're trying to reach that other 24% so we can save more lives.
Do you think technology really played a big role in helping hit that number? I mean, like you said, years ago you had to make a special trip, and now it's so easy.
Right, it is, and we have partnerships with many different organizations throughout the state, and we have iPads that we can just register somebody in the matter of minutes. So technology has definitely played a big part in it. It makes it a lot easier.
And just organ donation in general, Tammy, and for your daughter, does it help for your family does it in some way carry her legacy forward, kind of honor her life?
Oh yeah, it does. She's a never-ending story, as we call her now, because she's filling out lives and bringing other lives in, people to life, and giving life back, and that's what it's all about, is giving life back.
And I know you get to go to Pasadena and see the float, so have a wonderful trip, and I hope you really enjoy seeing her picture there in the center stage.
Thank you.
Still to come, a review of 2019 and a preview of 2020 in Indiana economic development. But first, Saturday, December 7th was a historic day for Marian University Athletics. The football team qualified for the NAIA National Championship. The women's soccer team finished its runner-up in the NAIA National Tournament, and the women's volleyball team took the NAIA National Championship. Director of Athletics Steve Downing joined Bill Benner on Inside Indiana Sports.
Let's talk about Marian. What an incredible run of success. And early, the first Saturday in December, your volleyball team wins the national championship, your women's soccer team finishes second, and your football team qualifies for yet another NAIA national championship. What a run for Marian.
Well, it's been a very good fall, and I've had coaches that are really committed to the program, and to tell you I was surprised would be a little bit of understatement because you need a lot of good things to happen for you when you win a championship at any level, and things have gone well for us for both of those teams, and hopefully the same will happen with football this weekend.
Well, and of course we know that the secret sauce. It starts with, but it starts with recruiting. I mean, obviously you're recruiting great student athletes.
Yeah, and that's the word we use, student athlete. And I tell all our prospects, all our recruits, that if I can't trust you in the classroom, I certainly won't trust you to win a ball game for me on Saturday, because all those intangibles that are required in the classroom, sacrifice, commitment, dedications, are exact qualities to be successful athletically.
Let's talk briefly about everyone. Marian volleyball, again, under Ashley Pritchard and national championship. I mean, they're a great program.
Yes, Ashley is the first coach I hired when I got to Marian, and she's had steady progress. And the last 3 years, she's won the conference championship. And she went into this year with a strong team, and she felt that she could get to the nationals anyway. So again, Gary Yohe, our volleyball coach, women's soccer coach. This is the first time we've ever had anything like that before, where they played in the championship game. They beat the number 1 team, and then the next day had to play against the number 2 team in the country, and fell a little bit short.
And Mark Henninger, Marian football has been outstanding almost from the get-go.
Well, yes. I mean, football is something our president really believes in, and we've done really, really good jobs. And there's a lot of talent here in Indianapolis, and I think we should be good. And Mark has taken advantage of this city and recruiting, and so we have some great athletes here.
And not just combined to the sports that we just mentioned. Scott Heddy's men's basketball team, currently 8th in the country, ranked 8th in the country. Katie Gerald's, her women's basketball team, ranked 4th in the country.
Yes, and my wrestling team is ranked 4th in the country too. So we had a great fall. Now we're transitioning to winter, and so hopefully these guys can step up and try to replicate what our fall sports have.
And not to be overlooked, and Marian Cycling has formed a great partnership with the Velodrome out there by campus, and they are the preeminent all-college cycling program.
Yeah, we recruit all over the world. I mean, we have world-class athletes, and Dean Peterson and Michael Kabansky have done a really good job assembling, and so we want to win. And so they have kind of set a standard for all of us to follow, really.
Well, Steve, we couldn't be more proud of what Marian is doing, representing the city of Indianapolis. And again, we hope for the best with the football game this weekend. Steve Downey.
Thanks a lot. I really appreciate you having me on, Bill.
You appreciate it.
Great guy.
You're welcome.
And finally, 2019 is just about in the books. How did Indiana's economy perform this year? And how does 2020 look? KSM Location Advisor CEO Tim Cook and President Katie Culp weighed in on this month's ION Economic Development segment.
Okay, let's get right to it. A lot happened in 2019. As we look around the state, first of all, Northwest Indiana. We were there for a road show, which we're going to rebroadcast next week from Northwest Indiana. A lot of change. Steel industry has changed. Tourism now beginning to come up. As you look at Northwest Indiana and things going on there, your take.
They've been on a hot streak for several years now, and you see a lot of capital being invested. And I think one of the things that's really cool up there, they are trying to actually get people to relocate there where they're not just working there but living there. So, I think they're making all the right moves in that part of the state.
Yeah, there's that, and Tim mentioned the capital investment. I mean, a lot of industrial investment is going in there, so you have that. But then there's the Hard Rock Casino. I mean, you've got a blend of different pieces of the economy.
Yep, tourism too, really beginning to take off with the national park designation at the Dunes. Northeast Indiana, Fort Wayne has a lot going on there. Let's go to the southwest part of the state, though. Evansville and that region, southwest, they seem to have momentum going as well. Yeah,
it's a long list of things, but the Atlas project comes to mind, and they've had expansion after expansion down there. And, Katie and I were talking earlier about I-69.
Yeah, I mean, it really is, it was an intentional result, right? That we're seeing economic growth there, and I-69 had a big part in that.
Is that because, obviously it's been going for a while, and some people, I think, assumed, hey, it's going to happen right away, development, but obviously it takes time. So that traction, you're seeing that traction really beginning to happen on I-69.
Yeah, it's definitely, you get a first mover and the rest follow. So I think it's coming.
Another region I think that doesn't get a lot of attention but should is Southeast Indiana and the Ohio River Bridges Project and River Ridge Commerce Center, which just has gone off the charts from a focus standpoint, a growth standpoint.
Every time you drive down there, there's a new big project. They had that Farm Accord project this year, which was huge, big capital investment, ton of jobs. One Southern Indiana does a really nice job down there, and they have a lot of momentum.
Yeah, they've in fact One Southern Indiana just this week getting a designation for a regional organization down there as well. And Katie, as you look at quality of life projects, those types of things in that area, and we were on the road to that region some months ago. How about operating as a region, not just in Southeast Indiana, but also bringing Louisville in and operating as that kind of cross-state region?
I've seen such, you mentioned at the beginning the decade is changing. You think back over 10 years, it used to be quite separated, and they really do have a unified approach to economic development, which makes it so much easier to attract big projects because those big companies aren't that concerned about territory lines.
Exactly, geography. Okay, lots happened in 2019. Let's look ahead to 2020. Tim, I'll start with you. Well, first of all, 2019, the big story. Was there one big story you think in 2019 that really stood out?
I thought the big story was you have all this angry political discourse in the country, but in Indiana, I think for the most part, localities, whether it was Republican or Democratic controlled, both parties work together really well, and Katie and I do deals all across the country. Indiana really stands out in that way, and I think it's something the state should really be proud of.
Katie, your take on?
I agree with that. I would say for 2019, I think about it from an economic development standpoint, the biggest thing that happened in my mind is Mayor Joe Hogsett and his administration. They're the leaders on this, but I strongly suspect it will have a ripple effect where they're looking at inclusive incentives and inclusive economic development, where they're kind of marrying community and economic development. While there may be some elements of that policy that pose challenges, I think the thought behind it is, the concept is kind of revolutionary for our part of the country, not for others. So I'm excited to see how other communities start marrying those two areas instead of operating in silos.
Okay, only have 30 seconds. Katie, I'll start with you. 2020, as we look ahead, what do you think the big story
I'm the
is?
negative Nancy. I think the economy is going to tighten, and it's going to have a big impact.
I think workforce continues to be a huge issue. You've got industrial competing with robots on the professional side. The millennials and Generation Z have a big impact on those issues.
Lots of stories to look ahead to. Great perspective, as always, Tim Cook and Katie Culp. Thank you both.
Thank you.
And Happy New Year.
That wraps up this week's Inside Indiana Business Television podcast. Remember, you can find all of this week's TV segments, as well as the top business news from throughout the state, at InsideIndianaBusiness.com. While you're there, you can also subscribe to our platform of free e-newsletters. This is Andy Ober for Inside Indiana Business.